With the Division having all the options to build your character or your squad the way that you want to, you can be expecting quite a bit of builds and character guides in the upcoming months on my channel. And with that, I thought it would be the best to start off with a build for those players who don't necessarily have a squad, a team, or even Xbox Live Gold or PlayStation Plus if you're on consoles, because those players are arguably going to have the roughest time in this game. So in this video, I will be showing you one of the best solo builds for the Division. Let's start this off with the attribute points. As you can see, I have primarily focused myself on getting a higher firearms and a higher stamina. I would say that you can juggle these two around a bit depending on your personal playstyle, but I wouldn't really spec too much into the electronics. Now, I'm not saying that the skills in this game are useless, but I feel like you sacrifice too much damage or health for it. And I know that the sticky bomb or the shield can technically make up for a lot of that lost damage and health, but I feel like when playing alone, there are skills like the first aid, which are just so much better in more situations, and they do not force you to limit your playstyle to sit behind what is actually just a riot shield. Now, when looking at the attributes, it is important that you do not look too much at the numbers, but more so towards the distribution. Yes, your character will have a lot less damage or a lot less health on level 12 or maybe 14, but the enemies will also be that much weaker, so in the end, it kinda adds up. For my primary weapon, I'm using an SMG. This can be any weapon that you like as long as it is an SMG. The reason for this is because SMGs have a built-in increased critical hit chance. The one I'm using has a 19.5% chance, and when you have some enemies rushing at you, the SMG will be the fastest way to melt them down. Except for maybe a shotgun, but the shotgun isn't that reliable in my opinion. Of course, if you can find an SMG with some fitting talents, that is great, but again, it is not mandatory. I don't even have the first one activated because it would require me to spec more into electronics, which I just don't think is smart when playing alone. I also have a couple of attachments that further spec into that critical hit chance and critical hit damage. And even a scope that gives me more headshot damage, so that will help even more to ramping up those numbers. My secondary weapon makes up for the one weakness that the SMG has, and that is engaging at a longer range. I'm using the MK17 marksman rifle, but any semi-automatic DMR would work just fine. Again, don't worry too much about the talents. If the gun has any, it's nice if you can unlock them, but it's not worth it at the cost of your health and your damage. Now, attachments for this weapon comes 100% down to personal preference. I feel like I can quite easily land some headshots, so I took something that increases headshot damage. But other than that, I just threw on some random mods for some more crit chance and some more crit damage to just make the weapon a little bit better. Now, I never really use my sidearm because I feel like it is worse than either my primary or my secondary, so you can pick whatever sidearm you like here. I just feel like I never run out of ammo, so I never need it. Now, since this is a guide for solo players, I think it is safe to assume that everyone that's watching this is looking for a more effective way to play, so I'm not going to talk too much about the extra bonuses on gear items, because it would be quite unrealistic to assume that everybody can get those type of bonuses for each specific gear item when there is so much randomness. All you have to worry about is where to put the attribute points, and that is towards the damage and the stamina. There is, however, one thing that you can kind of keep an eye on, and that is the scavenger bonus. Basically, the higher this is, the better the chances of enemies dropping better loot. You can usually find these bonuses on the mask and on the knee pads, but if you don't have them, that is no problem whatsoever. It's just a minor thing that doesn't really matter. Now let's move on to the skills and the talents. The first skill that I use is the first aid, and the mod that I have for it is the increased damage and a damage taken reduction. Besides medkits, I feel like this is the only way to get yourself back to full health, and that is absolutely mandatory in these longer missions. Of course, you could also go for the support station, but I feel like that the support station truly shines when you have multiple allies also benefiting from the heals. On top of that, the support station can also get shot down, and with the longer cooldown, I feel like it just doesn't out-heal the first aid. Now, for the second skill, I'm using the auto turret with either the flamethrower mod or the stun mod. I know that the turret doesn't do nearly as much damage as the sticky bomb or the seeker mine would, but you have to remember that we didn't really spec into electronics. That being said though, if you have a skill with crowd control, like for example here, the on fire effect and the stun effect, those will still be quite effective. And then you could again argue that you also have the sticky mine with the flashbang, which pretty much also disables NPCs. But the turret does one thing that no other skill does. It creates an extra body in the field. You see, when you throw this at the enemies, not only will it stun them or set them on fire, but it will also make the enemies around it focus their fire on the turret, which will give you more room to heal up or to focus the enemies down. Now, I am aware of the fact that a lot of the solo players also like to use the pulse with the damage buff. but I feel like this is more of a quality of life skill more than anything. Yes, it marks the enemies and makes them easier to kill, and it is definitely not a bad option, don't get me wrong. But I feel like that the turret is just so good at distracting the enemies, and it can really put the pressure away from you in those tense situations. For your signature skill, I would go for the survival link 100% of the time. Because what is the one thing that will keep you alive when you're cornered against the wall or when you're surrounded? Is it the more damage? No, you will still get bursted down. Is it the heal? It might be in some situations, but I feel like having 80% damage reduction and 30% movement speed for 15 seconds, that should be enough to get you out of any situation. Just use it and you basically cannot die for the next 15 seconds. And now, let's go to the talents. We have 4 of them. For the first one, I went for Fear Tactics, which, if you stun someone, it has a 30% chance to also stun everyone around that enemy. And it works great with the stun turret. If you, of course, use it with the fire turret, you can also go for the Wildfire talent, which basically does the same thing, but then for the fire effect. On top of that, it also works great with incendiary bullets. Then second up, I went for the Tech Support, which increases the duration of any active skills per kill that you get. Again, this works great with the turret. With this, I basically had a 100% uptime for the turret. Every time that it got destroyed, I could basically just drop a new one, and I had a lot more freedom when trying to pick off some targets. On the Move is also a must-have. It reduces the damage taken by 30% every time that you kill an enemy while on the move. This may not be that good with the sniper, but when you're using the SMG, you usually walk left or right to avoid bullets from the enemies. And although the effect doesn't stack, if you are more of a run and gun person, the uptime of this will also be almost 100%, which basically makes you 30% stronger in combat. And that is crazy. And last up, I went with Stopping Power, which increases the headshot damage every time that you suppress a target. If you have a nice spot and you sit back and either your turret or you suppresses an enemy, you get 25% extra headshot damage. When playing, it didn't activate as much as I thought that it would, but the times that it did, it was definitely noticeable. Now obviously this build is the result of a lot of testing, but to really see if it would hold its own, I decided to try out 2 of the 3 daily challenges that required me to complete 2 different missions on hard mode. And to be honest with you, using this build, it was kind of a walk in the park. I did both of the missions on hard the first try, I never went down. I mean, I still had to watch out for things such as claymores and explosives, and obviously I couldn't just stand in the middle of a fight. But if you're just a bit careful, it should be pretty easy. At the end, I did get a little bit cocky and I tried to do the challenge mode mission as well. But to be honest, that didn't go too well. The thing is with the challenge mode missions is that enemies are not scaled back if you're playing alone, so they are just as strong as if you were with 4 players. I wouldn't say that they are impossible to complete for solo players, but they're definitely not doable for the average gamer. For the Dark Zone, you might want to consider switching out the turret for the pool so you don't get ambushed too easily, but honestly, the best solo player strategy in the Dark Zone is to simply find another solo player or maybe a group of 2 and simply team up. There is no single build in this game that can prevent a good team of 4 players to kill you if they really want to. Even if you have the survival link and run away, they may have 2 or 3 of those survival links and will use them to catch up with you and burst you down. On top of that, the enemies in the Dark Zone also don't skill up if you're playing alone, and they are balanced around 3 or 4 man squads. Again, it's not impossible to play alone in the Dark Zone, but your chances of dying are just infinitely larger. At the end of the day, I feel like this game is still a way better experience if you're playing with some friends. But even if you have a solid group of 4 players to play with, there are just times when you want to chill out a bit and play by yourself, and this build should definitely help you out with that. And that was it for today's video. As always, I will see you guys later, or like they say in the Netherlands, zie je later!